John Denver was America's golden boy, a man who put sunshine on our shoulders and brought us home to the country roads of West Virginia. His gentle voice and simple acoustic guitar were more than just music. They were the soundtrack to a simpler, more hopeful time in the 1970s. He was a cultural phenomenon, a beacon of optimism whose songs about the beauty of the natural world felt like a warm embrace. But the way his life ended was anything but simple or gentle. On a crystal-clear California afternoon, his personal aircraft plunged into the Pacific with a violence that shattered his peaceful image forever. For years, the official story was chalked up to a tragic, unavoidable accident. But that was never the whole truth. When investigators finally pieced together the puzzle of his final frantic moments, the story they uncovered wasn't one of a simple accident at all. It was a deeply disturbing tale of a flawed machine, a deeply troubled man, and a series of shocking decisions that made his tragic end seem less like a random misfortune and more like a dark, unavoidable destiny. The murder of John Denver's simple, sunny legacy had been solved, and the truth was far darker and more complicated than anyone wanted to believe. Everyone thought they knew John Denver. He was the smiling, mop-topped folk singer who seemed to emerge fully formed from the heart of the Rocky Mountains. His rise to fame was meteoric. After penning the #1 hit, Leaving on a Jet Plane, for Peter, Paul, and Mary, he stepped into the spotlight himself and became one of the biggest stars of the decade. His songs were inescapable. From the heartfelt ode Annie's Song to the foot-stomping joy of Thank God I'm a Country Boy, he wasn't just a singer, he was a brand. He hosted his own TV specials, beaming into the living rooms of millions with his easy charm. He starred alongside the legendary George Burns in the hit movie, Oh God. Proving his appeal went far beyond music. He became a symbol of environmentalism long before it was fashionable, founding the WinStar Foundation to promote sustainability. The state of Colorado so thoroughly embraced him as their own that they named him their official poet laureate. This was the myth of John Denver, a carefully crafted persona of wholesome, approachable optimism that the public adored. The friendly smile and the warm tenor voice. A storm of personal turmoil was brewing, and it was about to bring that myth crashing down to earth with brutal force. The news broke on the evening of October 12, 1997, and it sent a tidal wave of shock and grief across the world. John Denver was gone. His experimental plane, a sleek and futuristic-looking aircraft, had been seen by witnesses banking sharply. Before nosediving into the tranquil waters of Monterey Bay, the setting was cruelly ironic, a beautiful, calm day that mirrored the very scenes he so often sang about. The initial reports were a chaotic mess of confusion and speculation. He was a highly skilled pilot with thousands of hours of flight time. How could this happen? In the absence of facts, rumors immediately began to swirl that he suffered a sudden heart attack mid-flight. Was there a catastrophic mechanical failure? The world was left with a gaping void and a million unanswered questions. The Coast Guard search began as a rescue mission, but soon turned into a grim recovery effort. The man who sang so beautifully about the majesty of the sky had been tragically and violently claimed by it. And as the world mourned, the deep mystery of what really happened on that clear Sunday afternoon had only just begun. As the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, began its meticulous investigation, one detail immediately stood out as deeply disturbing, pointing them toward a mechanical culprit. The plane itself, a Rutan Longaise, was a key part of the puzzle. This wasn't a standard factory-built Cessna or Piper Cub that most people are familiar with. The Longaise was an experimental, amateur-built aircraft, meaning it didn't have to adhere to the same strict federal design regulations. While known for its efficiency and unique design, it had quirks, and one of those quirks was fatally dangerous. In order to switch between the planes to separate fuel tanks, the pilot had to turn a small, unmarked handle. The problem? The builder of this specific plane had placed that handle behind the pilot's left shoulder, completely out of his line of sight. To reach it, a pilot would have to take his hand off the controls, twist his entire body, and fumble for the valve, essentially. Flying blind for several critical seconds, the original designer of the aircraft intended for the handle to be moved on the ground before takeoff, not during flight. For a pilot in an emergency, it was a death trap. This single, almost unbelievable design flaw set the stage for the tragedy, Revealing the first shocking piece of the puzzle, John Denver was flying a machine that was inherently and unnecessarily dangerous. But a flawed machine was only one part of the story. The next revelation from investigators was even more damning and shifted the focus directly onto the pilot himself. John Denver should never have been in that cockpit in the first place. Publicly, he was known as a veteran pilot with a passion for aviation. Privately, the Federal Aviation Administration had disqualified him from flying any aircraft. His medical certificate, a license every pilot is required to maintain, had been revoked. His application for a new one was denied due to his troubling history with alcohol. Denver had been arrested for driving under the influence on more than one occasion, and the FAA had serious documented concerns about his judgment and reliability. He was legally forbidden from flying. This discovery was a bombshell, completely shattering his public image as a responsible, nature-loving hero. He wasn't just the victim of a tragic accident. He was a man who was actively and knowingly breaking the law, taking a massive, selfish risk in a high-performance experimental plane he barely knew. And as investigators dug deeper into his personal life, they began to understand why he was willing to take such a reckless, fatal gamble. The man flying that plane was not the peaceful, centered person from his songs. In the years leading up to his death, John Denver's private life was in a state of utter chaos. His first marriage to Annie Martell, the woman who inspired one of the most beautiful love songs ever written, had ended in a bitter and painful divorce. The pressures of his superstardom had created a wedge between them that love couldn't overcome. During their acrimonious separation, his hidden anger erupted in a truly shocking way. He didn't just get angry. He reportedly took a chainsaw into their home and sawed their marital bed in half. It was a violent, aggressive act that revealed a deep well of rage simmering just beneath his gentle public facade. His second marriage, to Australian actress Cassandra Delaney, was just as turbulent. It was a whirlwind romance that ended in another painful and public divorce. Denver himself was brutally honest about the relationship's demise, stating in an interview, "Before our short-lived marriage ended in divorce, she was able to fool me from one end of the valley to the other." This wasn't just the sound of heartbreak. It was the portrait of a man in deep emotional distress, a man who felt betrayed, isolated, and was spiraling out of control. This was a profoundly dangerous headspace for any person, let alone the pilot of a powerful and unforgiving aircraft.